My husband wanted to father a child for his brother and sister-in-law. I warned him not to do it, but he went ahead anyway, insisting, "It's my family, my choice." Now, he and his family are begging me, but I've made my stance clear: not my child, not my problem. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. I married Mark believing he was my soulmate. I know, that word gets thrown around a lot. But I truly believed it. For 6 years, we had a good life. A steady, happy, comfortable life. It wasn't spectacular, not the kind you see in movies with grand romantic gestures. It was real. It was weekends spent in sweatpants, it was arguing over what to watch on TV, it was ours. We had 3 beautiful children. Our oldest, Jacob, who is all heart and serious questions. And then the twins, Luke and Lily, who were just 4 and were the chaotic, happy center of our universe. We built our life in one of those quiet suburban neighborhoods. You know the kind. Quiet streets, neatly trimmed lawns, where the biggest excitement is a new family moving in or the high school football game on Friday night. And I remember those early days, I remember them so clearly. I remember the hush of those suburban nights, the sound of the crickets, the feeling of the sprinkler system kicking on. It made me feel safe. I really felt like we were in this protected little bubble. A place where nothing truly, terribly bad could ever happen to us. We'd settle in after work. Mark had a good, solid job in finance. He was smart, good with numbers. I worked part-time as a bookkeeper from a small office I'd set up in a corner of our bedroom, which let me be there when Jacob got off the bus and before the twins woke up from their nap. Our house was always filled with noise. Laughter, mostly. Or the twins cooing in their cribs, or Jacob trying to read them a story, his little legs dangling off the chair, making up the words. I remember one Saturday morning, just a perfect, normal morning. This was maybe a year before it all fell apart. Mark was making pancakes, his specialty. He always made them in shapes, or tried to. Jacob had a dinosaur that looked more like a blob, and the twins were banging their spoons on their high-chair trays. Mark looked over at me, flour on his nose, and he had this huge, goofy grin. He was building this elaborate pillow fort in the living room for King Jacob. And I just thought, this is it. This is everything. This is what happy feels like. It was so perfect, so stable, that I never, not for 1 second, imagined how fast it could all unravel. How quickly it could all be set on fire. It started last year. It started with a single choice Mark made. A choice he made without ever asking my opinion, without ever even hinting he was thinking about it. That one choice wrecked our marriage. It wrecked it so completely, so thoroughly, that it left nothing behind but this awful, gaping wound of betrayal, this cold, hard rage I didn't even know I was capable of feeling. And a need a need to see him face exactly what he did. If anyone had told me back then, in that kitchen, laughing at his flour-covered nose, that Mark's loyalty was so thin, that his promises were so hollow, I would have called them a bitter, cynical liar. But the truth is, loyalty can vanish. It can disappear faster than you'd ever believe possible, all because one person decides that their spouse, their partner, the mother of their 3 children, just doesn't matter anymore. He dropped the bomb one night. It was a Tuesday. I remember that because Tuesday was trash night, and I just dragged the bins to the curb. We were sitting on the couch, or at least, we were physically on the same couch. It had become a habit. The kids were finally asleep, the house was quiet, and we would both just sit there, side by side, scrolling on our phones. The TV was on, some comedy show that neither of us was really watching. Mark turned to me, his phone still lit up in his hand, and he said it, just so casually. "Brenda, there's something I've decided to do." The casual nature of it, the tone of his voice, it set off every single alarm bell in my head. Mark only spoke like that, with that kind of flat finality, when he had a big announcement, something he was absolutely determined to push through, no matter what I thought. It was the voice he used when he bought our car without letting me test drive it first. My stomach just nodded. I clicked the mute button on the remote. The sudden silence in the room felt heavy, almost suffocating. "What's going on?" I asked, putting my own phone down. "You look serious." He put his phone down on the cushion and smoothed a hand over his jeans, like he was preparing himself. "I am. It's about my brother, Sam." Sam. His younger brother. Sam and his wife, Karen. My sister-in-law. I'd known them for years. Their story was, well, it was the great tragedy of the family. They had been struggling for years, almost a decade, to have a baby. I knew this. We all knew this. It was the elephant in the room at every Thanksgiving, every Christmas. They'd been through multiple, painful rounds of IVF. They'd spent a fortune, mortgaged their own small condo. And nothing worked. My heart, it truly did go out to them. I had my 3. I couldn't imagine their pain. I always assumed they would eventually adopt. "What about Sam?" I said, bracing myself. I thought maybe he was going to ask to lend them money. Again. "Well," Mark said, taking a deep breath. They finally got a concrete answer from the specialist in the city. It's definitive. Sam is completely infertile. There's 0 chance. It's him." "Oh, Mark," I said, and my heart just softened. All my defenses went down. That's devastating. For both of them. Poor Karen. "It is," he said, and his voice firmed up. He wasn't sad. He was determined. And that's why I've decided to help them. They found a surrogate, a woman who is willing to carry for them. And I'm going to be the donor. I just blinked. The words didn't connect. It was like he was speaking a different language. The donor? What do you mean, the donor? Mark held my gaze, his voice steady, like he was explaining a business decision, a line on a spreadsheet. "I mean, they need a donor to create the embryo. Karen's eggs are healthy, but they need the other half. So, I'm going to provide it. It would be my genetics, and Karen's egg. And this other woman, this surrogate, will carry it." I just stared at him. For a second, a long, stretching, silent second, I thought he was making some kind of sick, twisted joke. That it was the prelude to some other, more logical request. But there was no hint of a smile. His face was set. My heart rate just spiked. I could feel the blood pounding in my ears, hot and fast. You're telling me," I said, and I had to swallow past this huge lump in my throat, "that you're going to have a baby? With your sister-in-law?" "Brenda, don't be dramatic," he huffed, and his defensiveness flared up instantly. That should have been my first clue. "It's not with Karen. It's for Sam. It would be their embryo, genetically. I'm just the biological component. The surrogate is the carrier. It's the only way Sam can have a child that is at least partly from his own family, his own bloodline." My jaw felt tight. My hands were gripping the couch cushion. "And when," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "exactly, did you decide all this? Without telling me?" He had the nerve to look annoyed. Annoyed with me. He raised his chin. "I knew you'd freak out. This was a decision I made because Sam is my brother, and I can't stand seeing him this miserable. Karen and I talked about it extensively, and I'm certain it's what I want to do." The room started to spin. The blood drained from my face. "Karen, and you? You talked about it extensively?" I repeated, and a hot coil of anger, so hot it almost made me sick, tightened in my gut. That's great. That's just great, Mark. Meanwhile, I'm your wife. I'm the mother of your 3 children. I'm your partner in everything. And I'm the last one to find out? Do you have any idea, I whispered, and my voice was shaking, how that feels? To find out your husband is planning to have a child with another woman, and you're not even part of the conversation? His eyes flashed with exasperation, not guilt. Not shame. Exasperation. Brenda, I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but this is about my family. My brother. His happiness. I'm doing this with or without your permission. I hoped you'd support me, I really did. But I knew you'd try to stop me. And this is just too important. I could barely speak for a moment, my throat was so tight with fury. So that's it? You're just telling me? You're telling me to just accept that you're going to father another child? A child that isn't mine? A child that will be my children's half-sibling? A child that will be, genetically, half your sister-in-law's? And you think I'll just smile and clap my hands and say, go for it, honey? Mark stood up, crossing his arms. It was his power pose, the one he used when he was about to lay down the law. He was towering over me. You can call it what you want, but this is happening. Sam and Karen are counting on me. My parents are supportive. And if you really loved me, you'd respect that. An icy calm suddenly settled over me. It was more frightening than the anger. Respect? You don't show respect by blindsiding your wife with a choice that impacts our entire marriage, our finances, our children. You're not just making decisions about your biological component, Mark. You're making decisions about our family. He threw his hands up, a gesture of complete dismissal. Stop acting like you're the victim here. Sam is family, too. I'm saving him. I'm giving him a chance at a family. If you can't see that, then maybe I've overestimated you all these years. That final statement. That's what sent me over the edge. Overestimated me? I stood up, my fists clenched so hard my nails were digging into my palms, leaving little half-moon marks. Mark, if you go through with this, if you do this, it's going to tear us apart. I am telling you, right now, this will be the end of us. He just moved past me, walking toward the kitchen, his shoulders rigid. Then maybe we're not as strong as I believed. I just stood there, seething, in the quiet living room. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I tried to breathe through the anger, but it felt like a betrayal so profound, so deep, I couldn't even name it. The quiet house, our safe little bubble, it was pressing down on me, thick with the aftershock of his words. And although I told myself I should calm down, that we could talk about it in the morning, that he was just emotional about Sam, I already knew. Everything had changed. I thought the emotional betrayal was the worst part. I thought him choosing his brother and his sister-in-law over me, over our marriage vows, was the lowest he could sink. I was wrong. I was so wrong. A few days later, after we'd been living in this icy silence, he was sleeping in the guest room, by his own choice. I was trying to get our finances in order. I had this sick feeling in my stomach. I was thinking, I need to know what I'm dealing with. I need to know what a divorce would even look like. I needed to see a lawyer. But before I did, I needed to know our financial situation. I sat down at my little desk, the one crammed into the corner of our bedroom, and I started pulling up our bank accounts. Everything looked normal, checking our small joint savings, and then I clicked on the college fund. We had a separate savings account for the kids. We weren't rich, but we were diligent. We'd been putting money in it every single month since Jacob was born. It was our promise to them. It was their future. It wasn't a fortune, but it was theirs. There was supposed to be over $80,000 in that account. I logged in. And I stared at the screen. The account balance was $43.12. My blood ran cold. I thought it was a mistake. A bank glitch. It had to be. I refreshed the page. $43.12. My hands started to shake. I clicked on the transaction history. One large withdrawal. A wire transfer, dated 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. Before he had even told me. A wire transfer to a numbered company I didn't recognize. For the entire amount. I felt like I was going to be sick, right there on the carpet. I ran out of the bedroom. Mark was in his home office, the door closed. He was on a conference call. I could hear his loud, confident business voice through the wood. I didn't care. I slammed the door open. It hit the wall with a crack. He looked up, startled, his face instantly turning to thunder. Brenda! I'm on a call. What the hell? Where is the money, Mark? I said, and my voice was shaking so hard I barely recognized it. Where is our kids' college fund? His face went from angry to guilty. He flushed a deep, dark red. He quickly fumbled for his mouse, muting his mic. We'll talk about this later. Close the door. No! I shouted, and I heard Jacob stir in the next room, his little voice calling Mommy. I lowered my voice to a hiss, a venomous whisper. We will talk about it now. Where is the money? He stood up, kicking his chair back, and closed the door. Listen, it's fine. I'm handling it. It's complicated. Handling what? You stole our children's money. You stole from Jacob and Luke and Lily. I didn't steal it, he hissed back, his eyes darting around like a cornered animal. It's for the surrogacy. It's the deposit for the agency and the carrier. It's the startup fee. Sam and Karen didn't have the liquid cash, so I fronted it. I'm handling the finances for this. I couldn't breathe. You paid for it? You paid for this thing, with our savings? With our kids' college fund? Without asking me? It's an investment in family, Brenda. It's my brother. You don't get it. An investment? I was screaming now, I didn't care if the neighbors heard. You stole from your own children to fund a baby with another woman. What is wrong with you? And it got worse. I knew it wasn't the whole story. I spent that night, after he stormed out of the house to get some air, digging. I felt disgusting doing it. I felt like a thief in my own home, going through his desk, his files. But I knew. I just knew there was more. And there was. Tucked away, in a file marked personal, not household. He hadn't just emptied our savings. He had taken out a second mortgage on our house. I found the paperwork. A home equity line of credit. For $150,000. Signed 2 weeks ago. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely read the paper. My name was on it. Mark T. Miller and Brenda A. Miller. And then I saw it. At the bottom. His signature, bold and arrogant. And next to it, my signature. Brenda A. Miller. Only I had never, ever seen that document before in my life. I had never signed it. He had forged my signature. He had traced it, or faked it. It was close, it was frighteningly close, but it wasn't mine. The loop on the B was wrong. He had forged my name. He had committed fraud. He had stolen our family's security, drained our home of its equity, to fund this fantasy life for his brother. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was a crime. He had committed a felony against me, his own wife. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I sat at the kitchen table until the sun came up, holding that piece of paper, that proof of his fraud. The man I married, the man who built pillow forts and had flour on his nose, he was gone. In his place was a stranger. A con man. A thief. The next morning, when he came home, reeking of stale barroom smoke and guilt, I was waiting. I called a lawyer, Mark, I said, my voice dead calm. A lawyer? For what? He grumbled, rubbing his face, not even looking at me. I held up the mortgage document. For the divorce. And for this. His face went white. He finally understood. The next day, I didn't just call a lawyer. I went to one. I remember the feeling of walking into that sterile, high-rise office building. The smell of lemon polish and old paper. I'd found her online, Cynthia Davies. Her website said she specialized in complex, high-conflict divorce and forensic accounting. I knew I needed more than just a simple divorce lawyer. I sat in her office, on a stiff leather chair, and I laid it all out. The donor story. The secret conversations with Karen. The empty college fund. And then, the finale. I slid the forged mortgage document across her big mahogany desk. Cynthia, she was this sharp woman in her 50s, with piercing blue eyes and not a single hair out of place. She picked up the document. She looked at it. She looked at my driver's license, at my real signature on the retainer agreement. She didn't gasp. She didn't look shocked. She just nodded. Well, she said, her voice crisp. He's not just an adulterer, in spirit anyway. He's a fool. And he's a criminal. This forgery, this is our leverage. This is everything. I felt this strange wave of relief. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I was a victim of a crime. So what do we do? I asked, my voice small. We file, she said. We file for divorce on grounds of irreconcilable differences, and we let his lawyer know that we are in possession of this document. We let them know that we are reserving the right to press criminal charges for fraud. We don't, not yet. We use it to get you everything you deserve. The house. Full custody. And every dime he stole. When Mark was served the papers a few days later, the rage was biblical. I'd taken the kids to a friend's house, just in case. When I came home, a lamp was broken. A picture of us, our wedding picture, was on the floor, the glass shattered. How dare you, he yelled, pacing the living room, his face purple. You went behind my back? You're trying to destroy this family. After I told you why I was doing this? For Sam. Me? I just laughed. It was a horrible, broken sound. You're the one who forged my name on a loan document, Mark. That is a crime. You stole our kids' future. You're lucky I'm not calling the police right now and having you arrested. He paled at that. The word arrested hit him. But he recovered. He tried to pivot. He tried to gaslight me. It's a misunderstanding. I signed it for you, to expedite things. I was going to tell you. We can fix this, Brenda. You just need to accept that I'm doing this for Sam. Then we can move on. We can pay the money back. No, you're not hearing me, I said, standing my ground. There is no fix. There is no moving on. You went behind my back, you used our finances, you signed up to father a child, and you forged my name. Our marriage is secondary to your brother's baby. I am done. I am so done. The problem was, in our state, there's a mandatory 1-year separation before a divorce is finalized. 1 full year. And Mark refused to move out. He claimed he had a right to be there. This is my house, too, Brenda. I'm not leaving my children. He used the kids, of course. He used them as human shields. He claimed they deserved a stable house, even though the house was a toxic, silent war zone. He claimed he needed to be there to oversee the surrogacy process, which was a joke, since the surrogate was in another state. I didn't want to uproot my children, either. Cynthia, my lawyer, advised me that as long as I wasn't in physical danger, staying in the house and establishing status quo with me as the primary parent was the best thing for the eventual custody battle. Let him stay in the guest room, she said. Let him dig his own grave. Document everything. So I tolerated him. Tolerate is a generous word. He moved into the guest room permanently. I changed the lock on my bedroom door. I bought a mini fridge and put it in my closet. We moved like strangers. We were two ghosts sharing a mortgage, and the only thing connecting us was the thick, choking tension. It seeped into every corner of the house. We spoke only through text messages, about bills or who was picking up Jacob from soccer. I started to build scenes of this new, horrible life. One night, I was making dinner. Spaghetti. Just for me and the kids. I made exactly 4 portions. I set 3 plates at the table for us, and put my own in the microwave for later. Mark walked into the kitchen, smelling like whatever soap he used, and he just stood there, expecting a plate. He looked at the stove. He looked at the table. You didn't make me any? He asked, his voice full of this wounded disbelief. I didn't even look up from packing Jacob's lunch for the next day. I made enough for the kids and me. You're on your own. I heard him slam a cabinet. I heard him rip open a box of cereal and pour it, the sound of the O's hitting the bowl like tiny rocks. He ate his cereal, standing up at the counter, his back to us, while I sat with our children and asked them about their day. The silence was deafening. Another time, we passed in the hallway. It's a narrow hallway. We had to turn sideways to get past each other. And we did it without a single word. No excuse me, no eye contact. He just smelled like a stranger. The kids picked up on it, of course. They aren't stupid. Why don't you and Daddy sit together at dinner anymore, Mommy? Jacob asked one night, his little face all scrunched up with worry. I swallowed the bitter truth. It felt like swallowing glass. Sometimes grown-ups, sometimes they have big disagreements and they need some space, sweetie. But we both love you more than anything. And I'll always be here. The innocence in my child's eyes, it just made me want to throttle Mark. And Sam. And Karen. They had put us in this position. But mostly, I resented Mark. He let it happen. He made it happen. A few months into this hell, I got a call from the surrogacy agency. Well, Mark did. I heard him on the phone in the guest room. He was happy. The surrogate was pregnant. On the first try. It was a girl. And that's when my in-laws, Sam and Karen, started to invade. Now that there was a real baby on the way, a real piece of their family, they apparently felt they had a right to my home, since Mark was still technically living there. I came home from work one afternoon. I was tired. I'd been juggling my bookkeeping clients, who were all in a panic about quarterly taxes, and all 3 kids. Lily had a cold. I'd been up half the night with her. I was navigating parent-teacher conferences and doctor's appointments alone, all while my husband was living down the hall, texting his sister-in-law about baby names and ultrasound pictures. I walked in, balancing Lily on my hip, Jacob trailing behind me. And I found them. Sam and Karen. In my living room. With Mark. They were all smiling, holding paint swatches up against my living room wall. And Karen. Karen was holding a tape measure, measuring the space between the bookshelf and the TV. Oh, Brenda. Hi. Karen said, with this sickeningly sweet, triumphant smile. We were just planning. We're thinking a nice, soft yellow for this corner. Don't you think? It's gender neutral, but still warm. I just dropped my keys on the entryway table. The clatter was loud in the suddenly silent room. Lily started to fuss on my hip. Planning what, exactly, Karen? I said, my voice dangerously quiet. The nursery nook, of course, she said, like I was an idiot. Mark said we could set up the crib here, in the living room. That way, when the baby comes, he can help out with the night feedings. He'll be right here. Won't that be wonderful? I stared at her. Then I stared at my husband. He was just standing there, nodding, like this was the most normal, reasonable thing in the world. Set up a crib. For their baby. His and Karen's. In my living room. Brenda, Mark said, starting to look nervous at my silence, isn't it great? Karen found this amazing convertible crib on sale, and Sam can pick it up this weekend. It'll just be for a little while. I took a deep breath. I put Lily down, and she toddled over to Jacob. Jacob, I said, take your sister to your room and play. Mommy needs to talk to the grown-ups. He nodded, his eyes wide, and led her away. The moment they were out of earshot, I turned. Get out, I said. Karen's smile froze. What? Get out. Get your paint swatches and your tape measure and get out of my house. Now, Brenda, Sam started, trying to play peacemaker, putting his hand on my arm. We're just excited. We're family. We're all in this together. I recoiled from his touch like he was on fire. Don't you touch me, I snapped, my voice shaking with a rage I didn't even know I had. We are not in this together. It stopped being about family when you two lulled my husband into this twisted plan behind my back. It really stopped being about family when he stole our children's college fund to pay for it. Karen gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Mark looked like I'd slapped him. Brenda! Don't you dare talk about our finances in front of them. I will dare, Mark. I shouted. This is my house, too. My name is on the deed, the real one. And you will not turn it into your personal baby headquarters. You don't get to bring your mistress baby planners in here to redecorate. That is not fair. Karen shrieked, and the fake tears welled up instantly. It's not like we enjoy being here, around this. This hostility. We're just trying to make this as painless as possible for everyone. Painless? I laughed. It was a horrible, ugly sound. You want to talk about pain? You, who have been plotting with my husband. Let me guess. You expect me to go along with it? Maybe I should host the baby shower for you? Support Mark's pregnancy cravings while he helps you pick out strollers? For God's sake, Brenda. Mark yelled, his face purple. You're being unreasonable. You're hysterical. I'm being unreasonable? I turned on him, jabbing a finger at his chest. You forged my name. You emptied our savings. You are fathering a child with this woman's egg. And I'm unreasonable because I don't want their crib in my living room? I pointed at the door. If you two, I said to Sam and Karen, my voice low and shaking, ever show up here unannounced again, we are going to have a serious problem. A legal problem. My lawyer is very good. Do you understand me? Sam's face went pale. He knew I wasn't bluffing. He grabbed Karen's arm. Let's go, honey. She's not well. They hustled out, paint swatches scattering on the floor. The door slammed. And I was left alone in the living room with Mark. He whipped around, his face contorted with rage. He pointed that finger right at me. You're acting like a child. A spoiled, selfish child. I hope you realize you're alienating our children's aunt and uncle. I just shrugged, my heart hammering so hard it hurt my ribs. I'd rather alienate them than let them waltz in here as if my marriage, my home, and my signature don't matter. He stormed off into the guest room and slammed the door so hard a picture frame fell off the hallway wall. I was left alone in the living room, with the hot, swirling rage that had become a near-constant presence in my gut. I just sank onto the couch, put my head in my hands, and for the first time in weeks, I cried. The next few months were a grim routine. A living hell. The pregnancy, which was happening in another state, was progressing. I knew this because Mark was becoming more and more stressed. He hadn't just used our savings and the fraudulent loan. He was draining his own salary. It turned out, surrogacy wasn't a one-time fee. The agency had additional fees. The carrier, this woman in another state, needed special checkups. There were complications. The costs were piling up. He, who was so good with numbers, had been taken for a ride. He was a financial whiz at work, but a complete idiot when it came to his family. And now, he expected me to care. He expected me to be his emotional support. He'd sit at the kitchen table late at night, long after the kids were in bed. I'd come out for a glass of water, and he'd have piles of bills spread out in front of him. Medical bills. Agency invoices. The agency fees are more than I thought, he'd mutter, loud enough for me to hear. They're charging for administrative processing. It's ridiculous. I'd just fill my glass of water and turn to leave. Brenda, he'd say, his voice strained, desperate. I feel so overwhelmed. I'm not sleeping. This is a lot. I'd just pause at the doorway, my back to him. Sounds tough. You should probably call Karen. Or Sam. Or your mother. I'm sure they'd be happy to listen. And I'd walk away. He cornered me in the hallway one night as I was coming out of Lily's room. He'd been drinking. I could smell the whiskey on his breath. Can't you even talk to me? He slurred, blocking my path. I'm trying here. I'm the father of your children. You're supposed to support me. I looked at him, at his bloodshot eyes, his rumpled clothes. I felt nothing. Just cold disgust. I'm supposed to support your fraud? I'm supposed to support you stealing from our children? You're stressed, Mark? Good. You should be. What kind of heartless woman are you? He hissed, his face close to mine. And I snapped back, I'm the kind of woman who's tired of being treated like an ATM and a doormat. You made this decision. You handle it. Now get out of my way. He'd stomp off, often ranting about my cruelty, about how I was unbelievable. But every tear of frustration he shed, every sigh of stress, it just fell on the hardened shell of my heart. I reminded myself every single day of the $80,000. Of the forged signature. He had shown zero compassion for me. He had shown zero concern for our children's future. So I offered him the same courtesy. None. Then, of course, his family got involved. The attacks became coordinated. His mother called me. My mother-in-law, Joyce. I hadn't spoken to her in months. I picked up, thinking it might be an emergency. Her voice was just dripping with condescension and cold, righteous anger. Brenda. I just can't believe how you're treating my son. I can't believe how selfish you're being. We're all so disappointed in you. I just held the phone, listening. Mark is doing a wonderful, selfless act for his brother, she continued, her voice rising. He is giving the gift of life. And you are making his life a living hell. How can you deny him your support? How can you be so cold? I finally spoke, my voice just as cold as hers. Joyce. Maybe you should ask your son why he did it without telling me. Maybe you should ask him where our children's college fund went. Maybe you should ask him about the $150,000 loan he took out on my house by forging my name. There was a stunned silence on the other end. I owe him no support, I said. That baby isn't mine. And frankly, this conversation is over. I hung up. She tried to call back, twice. I blocked her number. His father tried next. He was an intimidator, an old-school bully. Young lady, he growled into the phone when I answered, thinking it was the school. You're heading down a very dark path. You are tearing this family apart. If you don't stop this divorce nonsense, if you don't start supporting my son, we'll see to it you regret it. He was implying they'd fight me for custody. That they had money, that they'd ruin me. I almost smirked. That's interesting, Paul. Because I already regret trusting your son with my marriage. And he's the one who's going to regret the fraud. Tell Joyce I said hello. And I hung up on him, too. And blocked his number. I had no doubt the entire extended family viewed me as a monster. As a cold, heartless witch who was standing in the way of their family miracle. But I also knew what my lawyer knew. The court doesn't care about selfless acts. The court cares about facts. The court cares about bank fraud. That fact was the only thing that let me sleep at night. And then, the baby came. It was just past midnight. I was asleep, finally. I had taken a sleeping pill, the only way I could get any rest in that house. I had locked my bedroom door, as I always did. I was woken up by pounding. Not a knock. A frantic, desperate, flesh and bone pounding on my door. Brenda! Brenda, wake up! Oh God, wake up! Please! It was Mark. He sounded terrified. My first thought, the kids. The house was on fire. I flew out of bed, my heart leaping into my throat. I fumbled with the deadbolt I'd had installed, my hands shaking. I ripped the door open. He was standing there in his pajamas, his hair wild, his eyes wide with panic. His phone was clutched in his hand, the screen lit up. It's time, he shouted, his voice cracking. The surrogate. Her water broke. She's in labor. The hospital just called. For a split second, I was just confused. The hospital, in Oregon? What? No! Not Oregon, he yelled, grabbing his sweatshirt from the floor of the guest room, where he'd thrown it. They moved her. Weeks ago. To be closer. She's at a hospital 2 hours away. Just across the state line. I hadn't known that. He'd moved his secret baby, his secret life, even closer. I need to go. I need to go now, he said, hopping on one foot, trying to pull on his jeans. He was shaking. My keys, where are my keys? Brenda, you have to drive me. Please. It's 2 hours, I'm shaking, I can't drive like this. I'll crash. Please, Brenda, help me. I just leaned against the doorframe of my room, crossing my arms. I felt the sleeping pill trying to pull me back down, but the adrenaline and the cold, hard rage were stronger. No, I said. He froze, one leg in his jeans. What? What do you mean, no? I mean, no. I'm not driving you, I said, my voice as cold and dead as I felt. I am not driving you 2 hours in the middle of the night to go witness the birth of your child with your sister-in-law's egg. That's Karen's job. Or Sam's. Sam's out of town, he said, his voice getting high and hysterical. He's at a conference in Denver. He's snowed in. And Karen's not answering her phone. I've called her 5 times. Her phone is going straight to voicemail. I need to get to the hospital now. I just shrugged. Call an Uber. Or a taxi. An Uber? He shrieked, his voice cracking. It'll take an hour just to get here. It's the middle of the night. I'll miss it. I'll miss the birth. Brenda, please. He actually dropped his pants and lunged forward, grabbing my arm. His grip was tight, desperate. You can't do this. You can't be this cruel. You can't just let me miss this. I yanked my arm away from him, a flash of disgust going through me. I looked him dead in the eye. All the pain, all the betrayal, all the sleepless nights, the $80,000, the forged signature, it all crystallized into one single, hard moment. Watch me, I said. I stepped back into my bedroom. He stumbled forward. Brenda. Please. Don't do this. You're heartless. You're a heartless monster. I gave a short, sharp nod. That's what happens when you ignore your spouse's feelings. That's what happens when you forge their name and steal from your children. Good luck with the baby, Mark. And I closed the door in his face. Not a slam. Just a solid, final click of the lock. I heard him scream in the hallway. A sound of pure animal rage and despair. You're a monster. You're a heartless monster, Brenda. You'll pay for this. I heard him pounding on the door, his fists hitting the wood, but I just walked away. I sat on the edge of my bed. I heard him fumbling in the hallway, cursing, presumably looking for his keys. I heard the front door slam, the frame rattling. And then the sound of his car peeling out of the driveway, tires squealing on the quiet suburban street. I got back in bed. And for a fleeting instant, a tiny, flickering instant, guilt gnawed at me. But I forced it down. I just forced it down, remembering the empty college fund. He chose to disregard me. He chose to destroy our family. Why should I rush to his side for a child that wasn't mine? I turned over, and eventually, I went back to sleep. If you are still listening to me, if you're still here, I just want to say, thank you. Please, help me out by liking this video and just comment with the number 1 down below. It lets me know that you're out there, that I'm not just talking into the void. It lets me know that you're this amazing person who is hearing me and walking with me on this. Your support, even just a little number 1, it's a huge encouragement for me. It really is. It helps me keep going. So please, comment with a 1 so I can see you. And now let me tell you what happened next. He missed the birth. He drove like a maniac, I'm sure, but he got there about 30 minutes after the baby was born. A girl. He'd sent me a single, bitter text. She's here. No thanks to you. The next morning, my phone blew up. Not from Mark, but from his mother, Joyce. Screaming voicemails. I listened to the first one, just for the satisfaction. You abandoned him. You let him drive alone, in that state. What kind of woman are you? You're a demon. I deleted them all. I continued my life. I got Jacob up, made him toast. I fed the twins, who were happily messy with their oatmeal. I got Jacob on the bus. The house was quiet. It was peaceful. I sat at my desk and I started working on my client's books. It was just another day. Mark didn't come home for 2 days. I figured he was at the hospital, playing the proud uncle? Father? Whatever he was. I was in the living room, reading a book, when the front door finally opened. It was late, almost 9 at night. The kids were in bed. I expected him to come in screaming. Or at least, sullen and angry. But he shuffled in like a ghost. He was pale, unshaven, and his clothes were rumpled, like he'd been sleeping in them. He looked completely, utterly broken. And he was holding a portable car seat. I just stared. I froze. I stared at that tiny, pink-faced infant, wrapped in a pink hospital blanket. That tiny, breathing reminder of the surrogacy that had destroyed my marriage. "Mark," I said, my voice clipped. "What is that? Why are you here with the baby?" He set the car seat down, his hands shaking. He sank onto the couch, the one opposite me, and put his head in his hands. "Shouldn't it be with Karen?" I pressed. "Or Sam?" Mark didn't look up. His voice was muffled by his hands. "Karen's still in the hospital. When she heard the baby was born, when I got there, I don't know, she had some kind of panic attack. Her blood pressure spiked. They're saying she had complications from all the stress. An infection. They're keeping her for observation. They don't know when she'll be released." "So where's Sam?" I asked. "Still in Denver," he mumbled. "His flight was cancelled. He's snowed in. He's trying to get a flight, but he's stuck." He finally looked up at me, and his eyes were red-rimmed, bloodshot, and desperate. "They discharged the baby. The surrogate, she signed the papers and she left. She's done. There was no one else. The hospital wouldn't keep her. They asked me, my name was on the paperwork, they asked me to take her. Just for a few weeks. Just until Karen's out and Sam's back." I scoffed. It was an ugly, sharp sound. "They asked you, or you volunteered? You played the hero? Is there a difference?" he snapped, his exhaustion making him angry. "I can't abandon her. She's helpless. She's my brother's child. You should have thought about that before you decided to have a secret baby and forge my name," I said, standing up. "But let's be crystal clear, Mark. I am not lifting a finger. I am not your nanny. I'm not changing a diaper. I'm not warming a bottle. If you're too tired to handle the crying, that's your problem. Not mine. You and your family wanted this baby. You got her." He rubbed his forehead, and a single, pathetic tear slipped down his cheek. "Have you always been this cruel, Brenda? Or did I push you into it?" he whispered. It seemed like he was talking more to himself than to me. "That's a question you can ask yourself at night, when the baby's screaming," I replied. "Now if you'll excuse me, I have real children to feed. My own." He flinched, as if I'd slapped him. But he said nothing. He just stared at the baby carrier as I walked away to my bedroom and locked the door. For the next month, our house was a special, unique kind of hell. "The infant," she wailed. She didn't just cry. She screamed. She had colic, or maybe she was just miserable, I don't know. But from 10 p.m. until 5 a.m., she shrieked. A high-pitched, relentless, nerve-shredding sound. And Mark, who had never been the primary parent for our own children when they were infants, who had never done a single night feeding with the twins, he was a complete wreck. He'd be shuffling around at 3 a.m., half awake, the baby screaming in his arms. I'd hear him in the kitchen, fumbling with bottles, cursing under his breath. I'd hear him trying to rock her, hissing shhh, shhh, his voice cracking with exhaustion and despair. He came to my locked door. He begged. "Brenda, please," he said one night, his voice breaking, his forehead pressed against the wood. I heard his tears dripping onto the bottle in his hands. "I need half an hour. Just half an hour to lie down. The baby's been crying for hours. I need a break. Please." I held his gaze through the crack in the door. I could see his bloodshot eye. I was unwavering. "Go call your mother, Mark. Go call Joyce. I'm sure she'd love to come over and help. Or call your father. Or call Karen at the hospital. I am not helping you. He'd let out this frustrated sob and turn away, the baby's cries echoing down the hallway. I felt a flicker of remorse, I admit it. But it was for the child. That poor, innocent baby had done nothing wrong. But this was Mark's doing. This was the consequence he had bought and paid for with my children's college fund. I would not let him off the hook. I would not save him. His mother and father visited often. They had to. They'd come over, and his mother would immediately take the baby, glaring at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. She'd coo at the baby, "Oh, you poor thing, is the mean lady ignoring you?" His father tried to corner me in the kitchen. "Listen here," he'd say, his face all puffed up. "You should be ashamed. Mark is postpartum, too, you know. He's exhausted. He needs rest. You can't just abandon him like this." I'd just glare at him, holding my coffee mug. He should have thought of that before ignoring my boundaries. He should have thought of that before he committed fraud. Let your family handle it. Not my baby, not my problem. He'd stomp away, cursing me under his breath. It was this constant chorus of condemnation. I was the monster. I was the cold, heartless witch. And I just endured it with this grim satisfaction. They thought I was heartless, but so far, the law was on my side. Especially once the finances came into question. The divorce process was slow, but it was inching forward. My lawyer, Cynthia, was brilliant. She was building the case. She presented all the evidence. The bank statements. The loan documents. The timeline of his deception. His explicit disregard for my refusal. His funneling of marital funds. And, of course, the forgery. Meanwhile, Mark's lawyer tried to spin me as this cruel, vindictive woman who had abandoned her husband in his time of need. But because the baby wasn't mine, and because he'd hidden his plans and forged my name, his argument held very, very little weight. Sam and Karen, ironically, were silent on the subject of finances. Sam finally got back from Denver. Karen finally got out of the hospital. They were probably just relieved they weren't on the hook for the money Mark had drained from our accounts. They just wanted the baby. But with Karen's ongoing medical issues and Sam's unreliable job situation, they couldn't even take full custody right away. The baby's presence in our house became this bizarre, tense, sleep-deprived arrangement that everyone hated. By the time we reached the final hearing, Mark had recovered physically from the newborn hell stage, but he was a shell. Frazzled, broke, and desperate. He cornered me in the living room 2 weeks before the court date. The baby was finally gone, staying with his parents until Karen was strong enough. The house was quiet. "I need some financial help," he said bluntly. "No, hello. No, how are you?" I looked up from my laptop. "For what?" He hesitated, then folded his arms. He was trying to look strong, but he just looked pathetic. "My lawyer says I might be entitled to spousal support. I shouldn't have to find a new job immediately. I'm recovering from the stress. I'm emotionally drained." I raised an eyebrow. "You're not my responsibility anymore, Mark." His mouth tightened. "I'm still the father of your 3 children," he snapped. "I'm not talking about money for the surrogacy. I mean money for me to live. To pay for my share of the expenses. To get my own apartment." I closed my laptop. Slowly. "When we're divorced, Mark, I will pay child support for our children as required by law, even though they will be with me. I have no problem with that. But I am not giving you a dime of spousal support. You're the one with the high-paying finance job. Or, you were." He'd lost that job, actually, during the month of newborn hell. He just stopped showing up. His eyes flashed. I deserve some financial security. I sacrificed my comfort, my sanity. For your brother, I interrupted. Not for me. That's the difference. His voice trembled. You're unbelievably cruel. You don't care that I'm struggling. That I'm probably depressed. I stared at him. I care about our children. The 3 children we made together. I don't care about the baby that's biologically yours and Karen's. And I don't care about the depression you invited into this house when you forged my name. You made this bed, Mark. Lie in it. He pressed his lips together, tears welling up. You'll regret this, he said, his voice shaking with rage and sorrow. You'll see. I shook my head. You've said that before. The only regret here is that we're in this mess at all. He swallowed, glancing away. Brenda, he said, his voice quiet. It hurts me to say this, but you're not the woman I remember. I gave a bleak laugh. Nor are you the man I married, Mark. Life changes. He marched away, leaving me with the quiet. At the final court date, Mark sat at one table with his lawyer. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight, and his suit was rumpled. I sat at another with Cynthia. I'd had my hair done. I wore my best suit. I looked, and felt, calm. Sam and Karen were in the gallery, sitting right behind Mark, wearing identical expressions of apprehension. The judge was a stern-faced woman in her 60s. Judge Albright. She had a reputation for being tough, but fair. She had reviewed all the documents. I could tell from her expression that she was not impressed. Mark's lawyer attempted a tearful, flowery speech about how Mark was driven by familial love, and how he had acted rashly, perhaps, but out of a deep, abiding loyalty to his brother. He tried to paint me as vindictive and emotionally abusive, how I had abandoned my husband with a newborn. Then Cynthia stood up. She was calm. She was careful. She wasn't emotional at all. She just presented the timeline. Your Honor, she said, her voice clear and carrying through the quiet courtroom, Mark Miller made this surrogacy decision without my client's consent. He then proceeded to fund this decision by draining the marital savings account, which was earmarked as a college fund for their 3 children. She slid the bank statements to the judge. The judge put on her glasses and looked at them. He then, Cynthia continued, her voice level, took out a $150,000 line of credit against the marital home, where my client and their 3 minor children reside. He did this by forging my client's signature on the loan documents. She presented the loan agreement, and right next to it, the sworn affidavit from the handwriting expert. Your Honor, this is not just a marital dispute. This is bank fraud. The judge's face, oh, it was a sight. She slowly took off her glasses. She looked at the forgery. Then she looked at the affidavit. Then she looked up, over the bench, and she stared at Mark. Just a dead, cold, silent stare. For about 10 seconds. Mark shrank in his chair. He was staring at his hands. When the judge spoke, her tone was clipped. She was furious. She found Mark's actions to be in blatant, fraudulent disregard of the marital partnership. She recognized that the baby, the product of the surrogacy, was not mine, and therefore I had no financial or parental obligations whatsoever. Regarding spousal support, she said, given the gross misuse and fraudulent acquisition of marital funds by Mr. Miller, his request for spousal support is not only denied, it is insulting. Then, she delivered the final blows. She awarded me primary, physical, and legal custody of our 3 children. Mark received supervised visitation once a month, provided he could prove a stable environment. She awarded me the house, free and clear. She ordered an emergency quitclaim deed, citing that its value had been critically compromised by his fraudulent loan. And finally, she ordered that all debts associated with the surrogacy and the line of credit were his sole responsibility. And, on top of that, he was ordered to repay the $80,000 he had stolen from the college fund, from his own future salary or any potential inheritance. As the judge delivered her ruling, Mark's face just crumpled. He put his head in his hands, and his shoulders started to shake. He was ruined. Financially, completely, and utterly ruined. I felt my own heart thumping. But mostly, I felt light. I felt vindicated. The crushing weight that had been on my chest for a year, it was gone. My revenge was complete. I had walked away from the husband who betrayed me, and the law backed me up. We stepped out into the hallway. It was over. Mark approached me, his eyes swollen and red. His lawyer was already gone. "Brenda," he whispered, his voice trembling. I never wanted it to come to this. I'm sorry. I truly am. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But I never thought you'd do this to me. I'm ruined. I gazed at him. I remembered the nights I'd pleaded with him. His dismissive retorts. His arrogance. His "then maybe we're not as strong as I believed." "You forged my signature, Mark," I said, my voice quiet but hard. "You stole from our children. You refused to listen when I begged you not to do this. Sorry doesn't come that cheap. Goodbye." Karen, who had been hovering, drifted closer, her face tear-stained. She tried to place a hand on my arm. "Brenda, don't you see? He's remorseful. He did it for us. For family." I jerked my arm away. "You got what you wanted, Karen. That baby is yours now. You can deal with the fallout. You and Sam can support Mark if you think he deserves it. You're all family, after all." "I'm done." They just stood there, speechless, as I turned and headed for the exit. The corridor felt brighter as I walked away. It felt as if a crushing weight had finally been lifted from my chest. In the weeks after the final decree, Mark moved in with his mother. He had to. He'd lost his job during that newborn hell month, and now his future salary, whatever it might be, was being garnished to repay the funds he stole. He was broke. Whenever I saw him during the custody exchanges, which happened at a supervised center, a sad little room with plastic toys, he looked frail. Regretful. He'd ask how the children were doing, and I'd answer politely, but I kept my distance. He'd cast these sad, forlorn glances at me, as if expecting some sign of tenderness, anything. I offered none. Sam and Karen eventually took over raising their baby. I saw them at the grocery store once. They looked haggard. Rumor has it they're strapped for cash. Sam's job was never stable, and Karen's hospital bills, plus the ongoing costs of a baby, had piled high. They were in no position to lend Mark a hand. He had ruined himself for them, and they couldn't even help him. My kids are doing so much better. Once the tension left the house, once the baby was gone, once he was gone, we fell into this calm, new rhythm. School days, weekend outings, family movie nights where we all piled on the couch with popcorn. No more crying baby to wake everyone at midnight. No more silent warfare in the hallways. Our house is quiet again. It's peaceful. It's ours. Occasionally, Mark texts me. Long, rambling, self-pitying messages about his regrets, about how he never foresaw Karen's health issues or Sam's unreliability. He mentioned that this selfless act hadn't truly helped anyone. It had just created more chaos and ruined his life. I offer polite, minimal replies. "Thank you for the update. Jacob has a dentist appointment on Tuesday, please be aware." One day, Jacob looked up at me while he was playing with Legos. "Mom," he said, his voice small. "Do you still love Dad?" I paused, and I knelt beside him. I put my hand on his head. I care about him, sweetie, because he's your father. But sometimes, grown-ups change. And sometimes they break trust in a way that can't be fixed. But I love you. And Luke. And Lily. And that will never, ever change. He seemed to accept it. He just nodded and went back to his Legos. The matter was resolved in his mind. Months turned into a year. The divorce is well behind me. I finally feel free. I kept the house. I have a stable job. I have primary custody of my children. Mark is still drifting, trying to regain his footing. People sometimes ask me, acquaintances who only heard pieces of the story, you know how they are. Why didn't you help him? After the baby was born? It was obvious he was overwhelmed. And I always answer the same way. He made a decision that excluded me. He committed a crime against me. And he faced the consequences. They'd often shake their heads, calling me merciless. Perhaps I was. But in a marriage, respect and honesty are vital. He showed neither. In the end, my revenge wasn't about violence or public humiliation. It was about letting him face every single ramification of his choice, alone. I withdrew the support he had taken for granted, and I let him see how stark and cold and broke the world could be when he neglected his wife's trust. The judge saw it my way. And so did life's harsh reality. If you ask me now whether I regret how merciless I was, I'll say no. Mark dealt the first blow by betraying me. I responded by giving him exactly what he asked for, autonomy. No shared finances. No emotional support. No illusions that we'd stay married through a fraud I never consented to. And in the end, I got my freedom and my children. While he was left to grapple with the selfless act that shattered our marriage. That's the story of how my husband's plan to help his brother turned him from my beloved husband into a stranger. And how I found my satisfaction in not saving him from his own choices. If that's cruel, then cruelty was the price of my dignity. And it was a price I was more than willing to pay. Thank you. Thank you for listening to my story. All of it. If it resonated with you, if you've ever felt that kind of betrayal, or even just the frustration, I'd be so grateful if you liked this video. And please, feel free to share your own thoughts or support in the comments below. It helps. It really does help to know that we're not alone. Take care of yourselves.